Sometimes you'll find it helpful to take a bunch of individual separate objects and keep them together. So let's say if you're drawing a person or a car and you have all these individual pieces, you want to make sure that they all stay together, all the same size, and they don't separate. You still want all the individual pieces to retain their individual identity. That's what grouping is all about, and I'm going to show you that first. After that, I'll show you compound paths where you can have individual objects kind of combined into one object. Let's take a look at grouping first. Right now I have just a plain blank document. Whichever color mode you're using is perfectly fine. But I'm going to go over here, let's say to the rectangle tool. I'll click and hold, and I'm going to bring up the polygon tool. Whatever shape you have is fine. I'm just going to draw a little shape like that. Maybe I'll hold down the shift key to keep it straight. And let's give it a color so we can see what we're doing. I'll go over here and let's say I'll just give it a fill of yellow. And that's fine. I want a bunch of these, so I'm going to get the selection tool, put my mouse pointer on there, and what you can do is on the Mac hold down the Option key, or in Windows hold down the Alt key, and you see your mouse pointer becomes a two-headed arrow, and now you can just drag, and when you drag, you'll get another shape. So just do that, Alt drag or Option drag, and get a bunch. They don't even have to be all in a particular order. However you want to do it is fine. Something messy like that is good. Now when you do that, each object is individual. And if you take any object and you drag it, well, you're just dragging that object. Or if you recolor an object, take one of those objects and go and give it a different color, and it's just that one object. I'm going to undo that. Press Command Z or Control Z in Windows. For now, I want to keep these all the same color. What you could do, of course, is you can select them. I'm just using a marquee selection. It's the easiest way of doing it for these pieces. Now, when you have them all selected, of course, you can drag them around anywhere on the page. You can rotate them if you want to rotate them. Just undo that. If you want to apply a different color, again, leave them selected and apply a different color. Now that's okay until you deselect. So if you click somewhere on the blank part of the page, you've deselected them, and now you're back to having individual objects again. So to keep them together, we'll group them. So again, I'll just do this marquee selection. I'm using the regular selection tool, and group begins with the letter G, so I'll press Command G or Control G in Windows. Now if you don't want to remember that, you can always go up to, let me undo that. So you could always go up to the Object menu, and from the Object menu, choose Group. And you see there's the shortcut, but Group, letter G, pretty much does it for me. So now I can deselect, and I can click any of these objects, move any of these objects around, and the whole group comes around. Now what if I apply a different color? Well, if I have the group selected, and I go up here and I choose a different color, now all of the objects get the new color. But wait, there's more. You can have nested groups. That is, you can have a group within a group. You can nest them as deep as you want. You can have groups within groups within groups. Let's just take this. I'll just maybe drag this over here and kind of do what I did before. I'll hold down the Option key or the Alt key in Windows and drag over here and create another one and continue holding down the key, and maybe I'll just drag and create a third. Now when I have this selected, let me just give this a different color, and I'll click any one of these and I'll give that a different color. So now I've applied a color to the entire group. Now to create a group of groups, kind of the same thing. I'll just put my mouse pointer over here and I'll drag a marquee, and you see the marquee box doesn't have to surround all the objects, just has to touch all of them. Now they're all selected, and now I can group them again. Command G or Control G in Windows, or go up to the Object menu and Group, and now when I'll deselect, I can once again select any one of these, and I can move them around or rotate them. What if I apply a different color? Now if you take a look up here in the fill box, see there's a question mark because they all have different colors, so it doesn't know what to show. But if you apply any color, now you've applied a color to the entire group. Again, I'm just going to undo that. What if you want to change the color or the stroke of maybe just one of those objects? Again, I'll click on the background and deselect. One way you could do it is go over here to the Direct Selection tool, click and hold, and then from the flyout you get this Group Selection tool. The Group Selection tool doesn't quite do what the name says. You might think, oh, okay, yeah, the Group Selection tool is going to select a group. Well, it really doesn't. It selects an object in the group. So when you have that on there, just grab any of these and click once, and now you see just one object is selected. I guess maybe Group Selection tool is an easier name than Select One Object of a Group tool. And now I'll give that a color. Make sure I've clicked it. And now I have just that selected. Now if I deselect and go back to the regular selection tool, you see I still have that as an object inside a group inside an outer group. Also, if you get that group selection tool and I double click that one object instead of clicking it, now I've subselected the entire nested group. And now I can do so. Well, maybe I'll give that a stroke instead of just another color here, just so you can see that's different. And again, I can click on the outside, click on the blank page, and now they're all part of group. If I want to ungroup, you can either press Command-Shift-G on the Mac or Control-Shift-G in Windows, or go up to the Object menu and ungroup. Now, because I have a nested group, that ungroups the individual groups, but these are still individual groups. But again, I can now Command-Shift-G or Control-Shift-G, and now I've ungrouped each individual one just from that group, not from any of the others. By the way, I said before that using the group selection tool is one way of selecting one object from within a group. There is another way, and that's called isolation mode, and we'll talk about that in the next lesson. We're not going to talk about that in this lesson. Now, let's take a look at compound paths. I'm just going to select all, Command-A or Control-A in Windows, and delete. And let's get the regular rectangle tool. I just want to create a background color. Whatever color you have in your fill color box is fine. I'm just going to draw a box. That's going to be a background. Okay, get the selection tool, deselect, and now let's go back and maybe I'll just use the polygon tool again, but let's choose a different color. Maybe I'll choose yellow. And I'll draw. Well, I gotta hold the shift key down to keep it straight. That's good. Let me kind of drag this here onto the page. Let's make a duplicate. So again, you have the regular selection tool. I'm going to hold down the Option key or the Alt key in Windows, so I get the two-headed arrow, and I'm just going to kind of drag to the side a little so we have these two objects one on top of another. Here's what compound paths will do. A compound path will take two or more objects and not just kind of clip them together like in a group. It'll join them together, but they will still retain their original identity if you ever want to undo the compound path later on. So let's select both of these objects. Select one, hold the shift key down, select the other, and now go back to the object menu, down towards the bottom, compound path, and make. Or you could use the Command 8 or Control 8 shortcut. And look what happens. This is why I drew that background color. They've kind of combined their one object just in terms of formatting, not in terms of the underlying outline. Let's go into Outline View. Press Command Y or Control Y in Windows, or go up to the View menu and look at Outline. And you see what's going on. Let me just deselect. These objects are really still two objects. Let's go back into regular preview mode, and we can undo the compound path. So select it, go back to the Object menu, back to Compound Path, and release. You got this complicated shortcut if you want, and now they are individual objects again. In fact, maybe take one and give one of them a different color. There we go. And now select both of them. And again, this time I'll press Command 8 or Control 8 in Windows. And notice that you get the compound path. Because it's a compound path and it's kind of treated like one object, that's why it has just one fill. That's why when you start out maybe with two or more colors, two or more color fills, when you do a compound path, they're going to settle on just one color. Grouping and creating compound paths are two very different ways of dealing with multiple objects simultaneously.